There's a moment when someone walks into a room and everything shifts.
The conversations pause.
The energy changes. People straighten up without knowing why. They're not famous. They're not the loudest. They're not even trying to get attention. Yet somehow, everyone becomes aware of their presence. That's not luck. That's mastery. And today, you're going to learn how to become that person. Most people think power comes from what you say or what you do. But the most dangerous form of influence is invisible. It's the kind that rewrites the rules of every room you enter without you saying a word. It's psychological warfare disguised as calm confidence. It's the ability to make people orbit around your energy like planets around the sun. And the man who understood this better than anyone was Niccolò Machiavelli. See, Machiavelli wasn't just a political theorist. He was a student of human nature. He understood that true power doesn't announce itself with fanfare.
It whispers.
It suggests. It makes people lean in closer because they sense something they can't quite name. Today, I'm going to show you how to build that same magnetic presence. How to become someone who doesn't chase respect but commands it. Someone who doesn't demand attention but deserves it. But here's what most people get wrong about charisma. They think it's about being likable, about making friends, about fitting in. That's not charisma. That's desperation wearing a mask. Real magnetic presence is about creating a gravitational field so strong that people naturally adjust their behavior around you. It's about becoming the standard everyone else measures themselves against, whether they admit it or not. Let me tell you about Marcus. 2 years ago, he was invisible at work. People talked over him in meetings. His ideas were ignored. His boss barely knew his name. Then something changed. Not his clothes. Not his job title. Not his salary. His presence. Within 6 months, the same people who used to dismiss him were asking for his opinion. The boss who forgot his name was inviting him to strategy sessions. What happened? He learned what I'm about to teach you. The first principle of magnetic presence is this: become unreadable. Most people are open books. You can see their insecurities written across their faces. Their need for approval. Their fear of rejection. Their desperation to be liked. But when someone can't figure you out, when they can't predict your reactions or decode your thoughts, they become obsessed with understanding you. And obsession is the gateway to influence. Think about the most powerful people you know.
Not the loud ones.
Not the aggressive ones. The ones who make you nervous without being threatening. Who make you want their approval without them asking for it. What do they have in common? They're mysteries. You never quite know what they're thinking. You never fully understand their motivations. And that uncertainty creates a psychological tension that most people find irresistible. Here's how you start building that mystery. Stop explaining yourself. When someone asks why you did something, don't give them a roadmap to your decision-making process. Give them just enough information to satisfy their immediate curiosity, but leave them wondering about the deeper reasons. When they ask about your weekend plans, don't give them your entire itinerary. Be vague. Be selective. Let them fill in the blanks with their imagination. And here's the psychological trick most people miss. What people imagine about you is always more powerful than what you actually tell them. When you give them complete information, you give them the power to categorize you, to predict you, to dismiss you. But when you leave gaps, their minds work overtime trying to solve the puzzle of who you are. And while they're busy trying to figure you out, they're thinking about you constantly. The second principle is emotional control. Not emotional suppression. Control. There's a difference. Suppression is when you pretend you don't feel anything. Control is when you feel everything but choose how much to show. When others are panicking, you're calm. When others are celebrating, you're measured. When others are angry, you're curious about what triggered them rather than reactive to their energy. Watch what happens when you're the only person in the room who doesn't mirror the emotional temperature around you. If everyone's stressed and you remain peaceful, they start looking to you for stability. If everyone's excited and you stay grounded, they begin to question whether their excitement is justified. You become the emotional anchor in a sea of chaos, and people naturally gravitate toward stability. But here's where most people make a critical mistake. They think emotional control means being cold or distant. Wrong. True emotional control means being selectively expressive. When you do show emotion, it carries weight because it's rare.
When you do smile, people remember it.
When you do get excited about something, people pay attention because it must be important if it moved you. Let me share a story about Sarah. She worked in a high-stress marketing agency where everyone was always either celebrating victories or panicking about deadlines. Sarah learned to stay steady through both. When the team landed a big client, while everyone else was cheering, she'd simply nod and say something like, "Good work.
What is next?"
When a project fell through and everyone was in crisis mode, she'd calmly ask, "What are our options?" Within months, people started coming to her for advice during stressful situations. Not because she had more experience, but because her emotional stability made her seem wise. Her boss began including her in leadership meetings because her calm presence helped keep discussions productive.
That is the power of emotional control.
It positions you as a leader without you having to fight for the title. The third principle is strategic scarcity.
Make your presence feel like a limited resource.
Most people are available all the time. They respond to texts immediately. They show up to every social gathering. They make themselves a predictable constant in everyone else's life. But constants are taken for granted. What people value is what they might lose. This doesn't mean being flaky or unreliable. It means being selective. When you do show up, make it count. When you do engage in conversation, make it meaningful. When you do offer your opinion, make it thoughtful. Quality over quantity in everything you do. Think about the difference between a restaurant that's always empty and one that always has a waiting list. The food might be identical, but the one that's harder to get into feels more valuable. The same psychology applies to people. When your time feels precious, people treat it with respect. When your attention feels exclusive, people compete for it. Here's a practical example. Instead of being the person who always initiates group conversations, become the person who responds thoughtfully when others reach out. Instead of being the first to arrive and last to leave at social events, show up fashionably late and leave while things are still interesting. Instead of sharing every thought that crosses your mind, speak when you have something genuinely valuable to add. The fourth principle is controlled intensity. This is where most people misunderstand what makes someone magnetic. They think it's about being the most energetic person in the room. But energy without control is just chaos. True magnetic presence comes from intensity that's barely contained, like a storm that's held in check by pure willpower. When you speak, speak with conviction but not volume. When you move, move with purpose but not urgency. When you look at someone, really look at them, but don't stare. There should always be a sense that there's more power beneath the surface than what you're showing. Like an iceberg, most of your strength should be hidden. This creates what psychologists call approach avoidance conflict in other people. They're drawn to your intensity but slightly intimidated by it. They want to get closer to understand what makes you tick, but they're not quite comfortable because they can't predict what you might do. This tension keeps them engaged and makes every interaction with you memorable.
Remember David.
He was a software engineer who got promoted to team lead not because he was the best programmer, but because he had this quiet intensity that made people listen when he spoke. In meetings, while others were talking over each other, David would sit quietly, absorbing everything. Then, when he finally spoke, his voice would cut through the noise. He didn't speak louder than anyone else, but somehow everyone heard him clearly. His words carried weight because they came from someone who clearly thought before speaking. The fifth principle is strategic withdrawal. Know when to disappear. Most people think that staying visible is the key to influence, but sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remove yourself from the equation. When you're always available, always present, always participating, you become part of the background noise. But when you strategically absent yourself, people notice the void. This works because of a psychological principle called the mere exposure effect. People assume that what they see often is normal, and what they see rarely is special. By controlling your availability, you control your perceived value. When you do return after a period of absence, people are more receptive to your ideas, more interested in your opinions, and more grateful for your attention. Think about how this works with celebrities. Part of their appeal comes from the fact that they're not accessible to everyone all the time. They appear for interviews, performances, or public events, but then they disappear back into their private lives. This cycle of appearance and withdrawal keeps them interesting and makes their public appearances feel special. The sixth principle is environmental awareness. Master the art of reading and influencing the energy of any space you enter. Most people walk into a room and react to what's already there. They join conversations that are already happening. They match the energy that's already present. But truly magnetic people reshape the environment to match their energy. This starts with your entrance. Don't burst through doors or creep in apologetically. Enter with calm confidence, as if you belong there and everyone else is lucky to share the space with you. Take a moment to scan the room, not looking for someone to talk to, but assessing the energy and deciding how you want to influence it. If the room is chaotic, bring calm. If it's boring, bring subtle intrigue. If it's tense, bring measured confidence. You're not trying to dominate the space aggressively. You're trying to become the gravitational center that everything else naturally orbits around. Here's what happened to Maria, a project manager who learned this principle. Before, she would walk into team meetings and immediately start talking about agenda items, trying to keep everyone focused through force of will. After learning about environmental influence, she changed her approach. She would enter the room calmly, sit down, and spend a few moments just observing. Then she would make a simple comment or ask a thoughtful question that naturally shifted the focus to where she wanted it to go. Instead of fighting against the room's energy, she learned to redirect it. Her meetings became more productive, and people started asking her to facilitate discussions in other contexts. The seventh principle is conversational control.
Master the rhythm of dialogue.
Most people think good conversation is about having something interesting to say, but truly magnetic people understand that it's about controlling the flow of information and emotion. They know when to speak, when to listen, and most importantly, when to create silence.
Silence is your secret weapon.
Most people are terrified of conversational pauses and will rush to fill them with words. But when you're comfortable with silence, you force others to reveal more than they intended. You create space for deeper thoughts to emerge. You make your eventual words carry more weight because they break the tension. Learn to ask questions that make people think rather than just respond. Instead of, "How was your weekend?" try, "What's the most interesting thing that happened to you this week?" Instead of, "What do you do?" try, "What kind of problems do you solve?" These questions require more thought and lead to more meaningful exchanges. And here's the advanced technique. Learn to end conversations at their peak. When the exchange is at its most interesting, when the other person is most engaged, politely excuse yourself. This leaves them wanting more and makes them more likely to seek you out in the future. Most people overstay conversations until they become boring or awkward. Magnetic people leave while they're still wanted. The eighth principle is visual presence. Your appearance should support your psychological impact, not create it. Dress well, but don't let your clothes be more interesting than you are. The goal is to eliminate any visual distractions that might prevent people from focusing on your energy and words. This doesn't mean you need expensive clothes or perfect physical features. It means being impeccably put together in a way that feels effortless. Your appearance should suggest that you have high standards for yourself without screaming for attention. Everything should look intentional but not forced. Pay attention to your posture and movement. Stand like someone who knows they belong wherever they are. Move with purpose, not urgency. Avoid fidgeting, excessive gesturing, or any physical habits that suggest nervousness or insecurity. Your body language should reinforce the message that you're calm, confident, and in control. The ninth principle is intellectual depth. Develop genuine expertise and curiosity about subjects that matter. Magnetic people aren't just charismatic. They're substantive. They have insights worth hearing and perspectives worth considering. They read widely, think deeply, and can contribute meaningfully to conversations about topics that go beyond surface-level social chatter. This doesn't mean becoming a know-it-all or showing off your knowledge inappropriately. It means having enough depth that when you do speak, people recognize they're hearing from someone who has something valuable to offer. It means being curious enough to ask better questions and insightful enough to make connections that others miss. Study psychology, philosophy, history, science, art, or whatever genuinely interests you, but do it deeply enough that you can offer unique perspectives. When someone brings up a topic you understand well, you can add value to the conversation rather than just participating in it. The 10th and final principle is authentic mystery. Everything I've taught you must be built on a foundation of genuine self-improvement and personal strength. You cannot fake magnetic presence indefinitely. The mystery, the emotional control, the intellectual depth, the confidence, all of it must be supported by real personal development. Spend time alone getting to know yourself. Develop your own opinions, values, and standards. Build skills that genuinely make you more capable and interesting.
Work on your physical and mental health.
Create a life that you're genuinely proud of, independent of what others think about it. When your magnetic presence comes from real substance rather than mere technique, it becomes sustainable and authentic. People will sense the difference between someone who's playing a role and someone who has genuinely developed themselves into a more powerful version of who they naturally are. Here's what all of this looks like in practice. Imagine walking into your workplace, a social gathering, or any room full of people. Instead of immediately seeking out familiar faces or trying to insert yourself into existing conversations, you pause.
You observe.
You assess the energy and decide how you want to influence it. When you do engage with others, your presence feels different.
Calmer.
More intentional. People find themselves paying closer attention when you speak because your words feel more carefully chosen. They notice that you ask better questions, that you seem genuinely interested in their answers rather than just waiting for your turn to talk. Over time, people start seeking out your opinions on important matters. They begin inviting you to events and meetings that matter. They remember your name and mention you in conversations when you're not there. Not because you've been pushy or self-promotional, but because you've made yourself genuinely valuable and memorable. This isn't about manipulation or deception. It's about becoming the best, most influential version of yourself. It's about developing the kind of presence that naturally draws people in and makes them want to be around you, work with you, and follow your lead. The world is full of people competing for attention through noise, drama, and desperation. But truly powerful people don't compete for attention. They command it through the sheer force of their developed character and refined presence. They understand that influence is not about making people do what you want, but about becoming the kind of person they naturally want to follow. Start implementing these principles today. Begin with the one that resonates most strongly with you, whether it's developing mystery, mastering emotional control, or creating strategic scarcity in your availability. Practice it consistently until it becomes natural. Then add the next principle. Remember, building magnetic presence is not a quick fix or a temporary performance.
It's a fundamental transformation in how you show up in the world.
It requires patience, self-discipline, and genuine commitment to becoming a more powerful version of yourself. But the investment is worth it. When you master these principles, you don't just become more influential in your career or more attractive in social situations. You become someone who moves through life with genuine confidence, who attracts opportunities and relationships that align with your values, and who makes a lasting impact on everyone you encounter.
The choice is yours.
You can continue blending into the background, competing for scraps of attention and respect. Or you can begin the work of building the kind of magnetic presence that makes respect and influence inevitable. The principles are here. The path is clear. All that remains is your commitment to walking it.